Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast of our podcast, the Prospect Power Hour, featuring me, Jesse Young, your host, and my co-host Ryan Lippert. How you doing, Ryan?
Good for another week of football.
All right. Okay, yeah, that's great. So we had a bunch of good games over the weekend, namely the big one, Oregon and Ohio State, that came down to the wire. There are a couple of other good ones, but not as anticipated as the others. But Stanford to USC, of course, the big news from yesterday was that USC fired their head coach Clay Helton after USC's performance Saturday night, and so we wish him well in his future ventures. And USC is looking for a head coach, so they are a name brand of college football, but they've been suffering from down times lately. So who do you think they'll go after?
There's there's a lot of rumors. There really are. Anytime you get a big powerhouse job like USC come open, the friend that my started to head out of town in Jacksonville and hop on that job. Don't know how much interest, but I think it will be a great program at the college level. After his first game, don't know if he'll really be much with there for him. And saw Schefter reported today Eric Bieniemy for the that coaching search. So that would be a very interesting name for me to watch, as well as he's been in the NFL and hasn't taken them or hasn't been offered them, and now that kind of looking his way, so it'll be fun to watch. I'm sure there will be a lot of cases.
Yeah, the other game was the Cyhawk Bowl, the game between Iowa and Iowa State, where Iowa just manhandled Iowa State again as usual. So that was really impressive. But Iowa State can't really. Matt Campbell can't really. Another USC candidate, believe it or not. He didn't. He hasn't beaten Iowa yet in his career. That's an interesting little factoid. And of course, Texas and Arkansas, where Arkansas just whooped up on Texas, and it wasn't close. And Sark's in a little bit of trouble, unfortunately. So, yeah, of course, the Holy War as well. That was a fun game. Uh, BYU won, finally ended the streak after I think it was like 15 years or so. That was a long time. Finally. Uh, yeah, and App State, they took Miami to the wire. Miami struggled a little bit, unfortunately. So that was pretty much it. Week two was basically, the big time programs against the little programs for the most part. The big teams making guarantee games, of course. And, I hate to say it as a Florida State fan, Jacksonville State beat Florida State on a Hail Mary because Florida State's defensive coordinator doesn't understand prevent defense, and he's basically Greg Williams 2.0, and it's sad to say, unfortunately. I still can't get over it. I will probably won't get over it for a while. Yeah. So, any other games that stuck out to you?
That Florida State game, I mean, it's tough anytime, especially within the 4,000 come in and beat you. I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow. And I said, Texas is not back. Doesn't look like right now. Arkansas, they took it. Not how SEC just yet, but I mean they could be a team to watch. Who knows? If you're working, seeing the game plan for Ohio State. They couldn't stop the run. It just you only have behind. Unfortunately, you only have so much time in the game. So Buckeyes ran out of time, and JL kind of introduced himself to the maybe the Heisman watch. I've seen a couple lists have it. I've seen a lot of people are putting them in their playoff predictions after week 2, and then as well as Iowa. We'll see if they can win the Big Ten or not. But no, there's a few teams that nobody really. It'll be fun to watch down the stretch.
Yeah, another game I had my eye on was Washington and Michigan, where Michigan just really just took it to them, and Washington's in serious trouble, as much as we all expected, because they're not their recruiting is not that good, and Michigan for all it's good, it's just they've shown in the past that they're not ready for the big time yet. Plus, the Big House is a tough place to play most years. So that's we'll see how both programs do going forward. And of course, another low key fun game was Missouri and Kentucky. Kentucky finally has a passing offense now, which is a surprise. Uh, and they traditionally had a good defense over the years, but now they pair it with a good passing offense. So we'll see how it fares against tougher competition going forward. But it's a good omen.
Yeah, I actually went to that game Saturday, Kentucky, Missouri, and for one, it was great being in a packed stadium. That's the loudest I've heard that place in a long time. Like you said, it's exciting times right now. Basketball team, they've been good the past few years, but we've just been missing that quarterback in games. They turn out to be the better of the two Penn State quarterbacks from last year's roster, and he has as a little spoiler, he's definitely going to be added to our prospect list. If he wants a high round pick, but he's a guy that can get some looks, and pair that with Chris Rodriguez, and our defense but they've still got some stout pieces there to work with. So I think we should be don't know when with Georgia still to worry about, but it's definitely exciting.
Okay, I think that wraps up the week 2 action for now. We'll see how these teams go forward from here. But moving on to week 3, there's quite a few matchups on the list that are very intriguing. There's a couple of games that are must-watch TV. But all throughout the early, mid, and late games, there's a couple of games on each block that are really definitely worth watching. Such as, let's begin with Nebraska and Oklahoma in Norman. It's an old school Big 12 rivalry before both schools decided to part ways. More infamously, it was more of a big time rivalry back in the 80s and 90s, even going back to the 70s. It was one of the premier rivalries in all of college football, but not so much anymore given the direction that both programs are going in. I think Nebraska, they struggled last week with Buffalo. So Nebraska, they don't have they're in a struggle boat right now. I'll just say.
Like I said, this is a big time rivalry back in the day. I mean, a lot of times these two played with, but I don't think anytime soon we're going to be talking about Nebraska and I I just don't see much anything to be excited about. Martinez being very mediocre, so to say, at least in my eyes. They just have not really. On the other hand, they got Spencer Rattler, who everybody crowned as QB1. He's probably no higher than my QB3. I just like a lot right now. I think Spencer's underperformed a little bit. He's still showing some flashes, but I don't keep. He does have some weapons. He's got great running back duo and Eric Gray and Marvin Mims and Jaden Hazelwood. Mims is their leading receiver right now. And then Austin, they do some things with it. And then you got on defense, you got a great pass rush. The two top leaders in QB hurries in the Big 12 right now, so they'll make for weekend, I believe, and then on the back end of that defense, you got that's at least one decent name to look at in the secondary. So I just don't for some of those Oklahoma prospects to have their stats good.
Yeah, it's Oklahoma had a FCS level opponent or Division III level opponent last week in Western Carolina. That was pretty much a scrimmage game. So I think Oklahoma is going to destroy Nebraska by at least 30. It's going to be Rattler, like you said, he's up there for QB1 conversation at the end of the year. We'll see. But just like last year, he's had a bit of a rough start. So, but I think consensus-wise, he's quarterback one for most people, with Carson Strong, another prospect we'll be talking about later on today, in contention for that honor as well. But I think Rattler is QB1 at this point for my grades. But so the NFL teams will be really have to be choosy about how they go forward in the draft, because there's maybe 3 or 4 teams this year that are looking really good for that number 1 pick. There are, I think the Texans are still in the hunt for that pick, even though they won. They're still Week 1 AFC South champions, believe it or not, because they're the only team that won in that division. I'm sorry, but it's the Jaguars, but that's another podcast for another day. Given Urban Meyer's tendencies to leave programs in their wake. So yeah, I think Oklahoma's going to win by at least 30.
Yeah, no argument for me there. I just don't see this being a game.
Yeah, moving on to our second game on the list. That's noon on ESPN. A little a future Big 12 member, Cincinnati, going against Big 10, Indiana, at noon. That's an interesting game. The personnel wise, Desmond Ridder at QB that no one really likes at this point for one reason or another. He was a prospect coming onto last year, and I know Cincinnati hasn't played the best of competition in the world so far, but he's been really good so far this year. So I think he's QB4 at this point. But Indiana, they struggled a little bit, a couple games in, but I think Cincinnati is going to win by at least. It's going to be close. I think Cincinnati is going to win by at least 10. From looking at it, from talent wise, pure talent wise.
Yeah, this is a game kind of packed with prospects. Um, they were super high on coming into the season, but they've kind of off to a slow start. They my next year running back and a Trifogel, a receiver, big body receiver that I still like player. And then defensively, they still got Micah McFadden at linebacker, and then second base. Got a lot of draftable guys, and they've got the talent, I think, to still compete with teams such as Cincinnati here. But they're kind of a quietly stacked team as well. As you mentioned, Ritter, I've got right now. He's a guy that I've kind of been looking at for my Steelers for personal reasons. We're picking, for say Ben does return. I mean, he's a guy that I look at that, I would not be mad at this point if he got rid. Like him, I mean, he's got running back at Jerome Ford that's been pretty good this year, and his league that's really played anybody. He's had a good first couple games, and then defensively, that got edge. And then I really like their secondary a lot. They got Ahmad Gardner, who could be a first safety. So they've got some guys. I think very I would not be surprised if Indiana came through and made this a statement game to try to get these.
Yeah, it's I think they're similar level opponents, similar level programs. But one factor is that Cincinnati distracted, given that Luke Fickell, their head coach, is the name candidate for USC. Though, will that be a distraction, or will they tune out that noise? And plus, it's at Indiana, so that's it's not basketball program, but if this was a basketball game, it'd be really fun to watch because both programs have been historically good in that sport. Yeah, I still miss Huggy Bear at Cincinnati. Those programs back in the day were really good. Those teams, Kenyon Martin, he was a dominant force for them for way back in the day. I know I'm kind of dating myself there, but uh, I watched this kid some in the NBA. That's how old I am. And Indiana, of course, they've been historically really good in basketball up until lately. But back to football. But I think if they can tune out the noise, I think Cincinnati wins because they have more talent and the better quarterback. And so it's going to be at least 10 to 14, I think. But that wraps up future Big 12 battle. So the next game on the schedule is a really, really fun matchup between two Northeast schools. Virginia Tech at West Virginia at Morgantown. It's on noon at Fox Sports 1. So that's the noon slate is really, really good this week. So there's a lot of balance to the noon slate. So I'll say Virginia Tech, they've been really good this year so far. Braxton Burmeister, the transfer from Oregon, he's been really good for them. But West Virginia, they struggled a little bit a couple of weeks ago against Maryland, which Maryland ultimately ended up winning. So I don't know, who knows? But Morgantown is one of the most fun college atmospheres that one person can go to that isn't affiliated with anybody, with an opponent, but as a neutral, it's really fun. With the Mountaineers since the Rich Rod days, a few years ago, it's been a really fun program.
I like a lot actually. West Virginia, like you said, they had the early loss to Maryland. But I think they got play like Brown at running back, and then Jared Doeg at quarterback, and he's got Winston. They can like you said, Virginia Tech. They've been very good this year. Burmeister's having a great year. He's had a draft. They've got some guys. They've got some. This should be, I think, a very close game. I think I'm gonna actually move toward because of that atmosphere in Morgantown, and I think this would be a big win for West Virginia. I could honestly see it going either way. If I was looking at this game, I flip-flopped my pick so many times. I feel very good.
Yeah, I think the home atmosphere in Morgantown wins out a little bit. It's just I think West Virginia wins by less than 10 because both teams are roughly on par with each other right now this year. And of course, Letty Brown, their running back's really good. Jarrett Doege, he has a future in the NFL as a backup. He won't be drafted highly, probably. His ceiling is probably round 4 at best if everything works out. But I think he's more towards the 5th or 6th round range at this point. Obviously before the combine and all that other postseason stuff like Senior Bowl, Shrine Game. So we'll see. It's just that Doege, I think he's really improved from his Bowling Green days. So yeah, that's gonna be a fun one to watch. But moving on to our next loaded noon slate matchup is Michigan State at Miami. That's gonna be a really good one on ABC. So Miami struggled, like I said, with App State last weekend. It was close until like 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, where it's just App State kind of choked that one away because they were driving and they just threw away the ball for some reason. And Miami looks right to be had. And Michigan State, they've been, of course, good on offense for like the first time in years, probably. Kenneth Walker the fourth, their star running back, he's blown up this year for over 500 yards in like 2 games. So Miami will be a fun test for the Spartans in this one. So I think Miami wins by, given the home factor, and Miami wins by less than 7. I think maybe 5 or 6, because it's just. I don't know. Michigan State's a really good, well-coached team under Mel Tucker. It's just I don't think they have the offensive pieces to keep up with Miami. Of course, Miami has Derek King, the star quarterback. So they have a bunch of running backs, and receivers as well. Of course, a tight end. So it's going to be really interesting for them to watch. I think that's the best game of the noon time.
Very they've been kind of one of the big surprises so far this early in the season. You got their quarterback he knocked off Anthony Russo from that starting job, and he's been impressive so far. And so you got Kent, they've got Jordan Simmons also in that backfield as a sophomore who's pretty those are some key guys to watch, and they got Connor Hayward, guy other they got Quavarius Crouch at linebacker, so athletic. And like you said, even though Miami has struggled, they had the kind of one in and then they had last week barely squeaked out the win against Appalachian State, but they got enough guys at quarterback, still looking for him to have a breakout game. Cameron Harris at running back. He's got a couple targets. And Keyshawn Smith. Then the tight end Will Mallory, who a lot of people were really down to see. You got Bolden at safety. So they've still got a lot of talent. I think this is a game where they need a quality win. I don't think you can really chalk up last week, which a win is when they get up and be proud of with the expectations that Miami had coming into the season. So I think this is their opportunity to show what they were supposed to be.
Yeah, one guy from Miami that I have my eye on for a couple of years now is the former Georgia cornerback Tyrique Stevenson. He's been playing really well for them this year. And Bubba Bolden, even though he's been a little iffy in pass coverage, he's been really good for them. He's a team captain, I believe. So it's just, of course, Charleston Rambo, the former Oklahoma receiver who transferred there, and the tight end's name is Will Mallory. He's hyped to be the next great tight end from the U. So we'll see about that. Like you said, I think Miami's going to out-talent them eventually. It's going to be a really close game. I think Miami is looking forward to this game a little bit last week, and that's why they struggled. So it's going to be really close. But I think that wraps up the news slate for this week. It's really good. I think not to look too far ahead. I think that's the best news slate so far this year. Looking forward to it. So the 3:30 slate, obviously the biggest game of the day. Yeah, so biggest game, Alabama at Florida, 3:30 on CBS. I think that's the biggest game so far. So what do you think about this one?
I mean, Alabama once again this year. They look like they're filling enough roster. Look with our sides, and you can make a case that any of those players could get drafted at some point. He looks to be at the forefront of the Heisman race right now. He's been very impressive. He's and John Mechie, the new number one receiver, and then you got they lost in the rotation there, but he's kind of found his niche at Alabama. I think Watson got Billingsley at tight end and Evan Neal at offensive tackle. So those guys are picks. Then defense, you could just list off the starting defense. Christian Harris, two backers, and then their whole defensive line is stacked. They got Josh Jobe at corner. So they got this team once again. I'd pick them to run the table and win the national championship again this year. But they got some. They got an interesting quarterback situation going on. They got Emory Jones from last year, but they got this new freshman, Anthony Richardson, who also leads the team in rushing. Talked to friends. I was like, who's going to be the starter when they come and play us Kentucky? He's like, man, he's good. Jones is still the starter. I think Richardson's covers. We got Jake Copeland and Justin Shorter at the receivers. They got Ventrell Miller, who I like a lot, should be one of the top linebackers in this year's draft. And then be a pick or potential first-round pick. Then Trey Dean, the second. But Florida but it's at the end of the day, it's Alabama. I mean, it's going to be tough for them to get in that house.
Yeah, it's probably the most fun game of the night, afternoon. So the one matchup I'm looking forward to is John Mechie against Kyer Elam. Probably two probable first round picks. So that's gonna be the most fun matchup of the weekend, probably. Uh, Evan Neal, he's probably offensive tackle number one this year. No questions asked. And of course, defensively, it's a shame that Christian Harris got hurt last and is out for the season. I think he has a foot injury, according to Nick Saban. So that's a really bad shame, because I was looking for him to break out this year. So it's going to be really interesting if defensively Alabama can if Alabama allows Florida to score more than 14 points compared to other opponents Alabama's faced this year. But Jacob Copeland, another receiver for Florida, he's really good. He came back. He was part of that duo that had Trevon Grimes, Kadarius Toney, Van Jefferson. He was probably receiver 4 in that group from a couple of years ago, so he stuck around for a little bit. But I think that's the matchup everyone's looking forward to, is John Mechie against Kyer Elam. I'm not sure if he's related to Matt Elam from way back in the day from Florida, but of course, Ventrell Miller, he's probably a second, third round pick at this point, at this juncture. Elijah Blades is another corner they have at Florida, the former A&M cornerback who transferred there. Yeah, I think he's a super senior. And Justin Shorter, the former 5-star guy from Penn State, he transferred to Florida so that's be another name to watch. DeMarcus Bowman, another guy from Clemson, transferred. So, like you said, it's going to be really interesting how Dan Mullen deploys his quarterbacks in this one. Most Florida fans, they want Richardson to take over, but I think Jones has more than held his own. I think there, but this game's going to be a lot closer than other people think. I think Alabama ultimately wins up by at least 14.
Yeah, I was thinking about earlier. It reminds me a little bit, not to compare anybody to Tim Tebow. I think he was close. Reminds me of the Chris Leak year with Florida. He was the guy, but he kind of brought up, got his reps, but you knew he was gonna be eventually the guy. I think kind of has right now. Jones is a manageable quarterback. He can get the job done for him. He's more intriguing talent, I would say, for the future. But especially against Alabama, like we're playing help team win, or at least attempt to win in this case. But I don't see him hurt, risk killing his confidence if he's getting beat up bad. So I think he figured out the situation. We could be surprised, but I think that conversation will be had toward the end of the season. Yeah, I agree with you on the score. I think Bama wins by multiple scores in this one.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I don't know. It's gonna be at the Swamp. Plus, with fans this time. So yeah, but I think Alabama's gonna eventually out talent them. Eventually. So another 3:30 game that's really intriguing, given all that's went on in Los Angeles this past week, is USC at Washington State. It's on Fox, so the Palouse is always a fun place to play for the West Coast teams. out there. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. USC just made a head coaching change, so Dante Williams takes over as the interim head coach. I won't get into how he got the job allegedly. This I don't want to get into allegations or anything, but there are sources that claim that he wasn't the most forthright, I'll say, in getting the job. But I'll just leave it at that. On the field, on the field, Drake London, their star receiver, he's off to a slow start this year as the leading man. Keaton Slovis, he had a horrible game last week, as most of the Trojans against last week against Stanford. Drake London. Oh, not yeah, yeah. It's gonna be the other Drake on defense. He's been really good this year. Uh, of course, Isaiah Polamalu, the nephew of Troy Polamalu. He's been really good this year. So it's going to be really interesting to see how USC bounces back after such a tough loss. Of course, Drake Jackson, of course, is the edge name I was struggling with. So defensively, they have a bunch of guys. Corey Foreman, this 5-star freshman recruit, so he's been playing off and on. Yeah, Isaac Taylor Stewart, the cornerback, he's really good. So Washington State has a couple guys as well. Max Borghi, the star running back for them. He's been there for at least 10 years, it seems like. Jihad Woods, the super senior linebacker, defensive end / guy. Of course, their head coach. The head coach of Washington State, Nick Rolovich, he has some issues of his own. He might not see the year given the off-field concerns regarding his stance on the COVID vaccine, but we won't get into that here on this show. So it's on the field wise, it's a really close game, full of intrigue and drama. So it's going to be, I say, USC by 10. But the Palouse is always good for a good upset or two every year, so I think this is one of them.
Yeah, like I said, a lot going on at USC. A not so good Stanford team last week. And then, of course, the change. Got kind of USC. Slovis was a guy I liked a lot at quarterback, but he did not do himself last week. Like I said, they still got London at receiver. Defensively, Drake Jackson, he's still going to be a first-round pick. They got Paul there as well. Washington State, they got, like I said, Borghi. I like Jr. And a guy I'm interested to see in this one for them is their big 6'7" offensive tackle. I want to know some of that edge rush from USC. I think that'll be a fun matchup to watch, and for him really to get some tape for some of these scouts to look at.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be a low-key fun game of the evening, or the afternoon, rather. It's going to be, I think it's going to be really close given the drama. We'll see how Dante Williams coaches against this one, given his he was a secondary coach. He was elevated to the head coaching role over the coordinators, which is interesting to say the least. Because normally in that kind of situation, the coordinators usually get the interim tag before any of the position coaches. So, yeah, it's gonna be one of the most fun ones, I'll say. So, yeah, it's enough about USC for now. I think we're all sick of the talk right now for the Trojans. But moving towards the evening slate, we have a couple of good games, several good games that were worth watching. First off, South Carolina at Georgia on ESPN at 7 p.m. I mean, as it's given Georgia a start, I think it's going to be a lot closer than most people think. I think the nominal starting quarterback for South Carolina's back. They've been starting the grad transfer for a couple of weeks now. Hopefully, the starting quarterback is back, but we'll see about that. Georgia, of course, is loaded on defense. Nolan Smith, their star linebacker. N'Kobe Dean's another one. Yeah, defensively, Georgia's loaded. Jordan Smith, the star defensive tackle. Hopefully, hopefully, JT Daniels is back for this one, but Stetson Bennett stepped in last week, pretty good. Even though it was UAB, he played pretty well for UAB, I think.
Yeah, this one will be interesting. Especially given that it's at Georgia. Is it at Georgia or at South Carolina? I think it's at Georgia.
I think it's at Georgia, so
Yeah. I mean, they're off to a hot start. JT had the injury at quarterback. He looks to be in practice this week. He's questionable in last week and got the job done for them, and so Daniels could rest. They got the duo in the country in Zamir White and James Cook. Per usual, Georgia usually has great kind of hit with the injury bug. George Pickens, I wish he was playing this year. He could have been in that. Now he was limited in practice. I saw this week, but they got guys like Jermaine Burton and should be. Then defensively, they've got a stud on the interior of that defense. This year. Then a Kobe Dean at linebacker, and they got a that have been very impressive as well. So there'll be a handful for South Carolina. Like you said, South Carolina that the former GA stepped in. I mean, he's got them off to an undefeated start. Kevin Harrison, who is a monster. Nick third interior defensive lineman as well, Zach Pickens. He should be on a lot of people's radar this year. So, well, maybe with Georgia, but I think Georgia's they're going to be too much to handle, I think.
Yeah, this is kind of a homecoming for Shane Bieber. He was at Georgia for a little bit previously under Kirby, so that's gonna be really interesting. The homecoming factor, but I think Georgia's gonna win by at least 17, if not more. So yeah, moving on to the next low key game that everyone should be watching. Utah at San Diego State, 7 on CBS Sports Network. Of course, Utah is coming off the loss in the Holy War last week against BYU, so we'll see how they rebound. San Diego State's always good for a win or two that no one sees coming every year. I think this might be one of them. The Utah has a couple guys that should be on the radar. Charlie Brewer, the Baylor transfer quarterback, he didn't play that well last week, of course. Britton Covey, their receiver, Utah is really good as a slot guy. Yes, he's a future New England Patriot prototype. I'm sorry to say it. I hate to make that comparison, but he's an ideal slot receiver. Defensively, they have a couple guys as well. They have a veteran but young secondary that's been really, given their losses the past couple years in the secondary, they've been tested. But this secondary is kind of youngish, but they played a lot. And of course, Utah is a very good developmental program, as I mentioned. over and over and over. Uh, and Nick Ford, their star lineman, he might be drafted maybe day 2 at the earliest, maybe third round, late third round if he sneaks in there. He's that kind of caliber prospect. But San Diego State has a couple of guys as usual. So namely their ends, their edges are really good. Their secondaries are really good as well. So it's at San Diego State. So um, I think Utah is going to win talent wise, maybe by 7. I'll say it.
Yeah, this could be an interesting matchup. San Diego State guys that can make for some trouble or make for a trap game. Some guys, and then I made another tight end, Daniel Bellinger, who's their leading receiver this year. In Utah, they're coming off that loss last week in the Holy Roar, but I think this is a bounce back game. Poor performance last week, and then defensively, a guy that I'm always going to say is number one. I'm very high on him. Athletic, flies to the ball. Very good. I'm very interested to see him throughout the season.
Yeah, it's gonna be a really good game. I think that everyone should be paying attention to. I think Draft Hitter will have a lot of fans watching this one, myself included, probably. But the big one, of course, of the evening slate, Auburn going to Penn State at 7:30 ABC. I think it's a whiteout. Yeah, I think it's a whiteout game. I think this one, or it should be. Given the caliber opponent that's going in there. Auburn, of course, has a new and improved Bo Nix. Reportedly, he's been doing really well in the new regime under Brian Harsin. Of course, we have Smoke Monday, the star defensive back. A lot of fun names on Auburn's roster. Penn State has a couple of guys. Jahan Dotson, their receiver, former 5-star recruit. He's gonna be really good for them. Of course, Noah Kane, the star running back. He's been really well. He played really well in the Wisconsin game, believe it or not. Even though Wisconsin blew him out a couple of weeks ago in the opener. But defensively, they also have Adisa Isaac, their defensive end. He should be drafted maybe, I want to say day 3, day 2. He won't be as highly as regarded as Jason Owa or previous defensive edges out of Penn State, but he's draftable. I'll say that. Of course, cornerback Tyrique Fields. Of course, he's been there forever. It seems he's a super senior. I think he's a day 3 pick right now. Jaquan Brisker, he's another super senior, so he should be another day 3 pick, a day 2 pick if he's really balls out the rest of the season. I think he's probably in the 5th or 6th round range at this point.
I think it's a good game. I mean, that's a tough atmosphere for Auburn coming to. Penn State, they've been very good so far. Been early in the season, and then last week, I mean, they played Ball State. But Sean Clifford, he's played decent this year. I mean, he's got Dotson out at receiver. He should be one of the first round to early day 2 pick. I like those. I think they're an exciting team right now. He said the new and improved Bo Nix, and then big run like a lot. He's going to be a guy to look for next year in the draft. So he'll be when he comes out. And then they've got senior Sean Shivers behind him in the backfield. You got Hunter, true freshman, who actually, surprisingly enough, leads the team in rushing right now. So he had monsters there, but they got some receivers as well. Demetrius Robertson, the transfer from Georgia, put on every season when he's at Georgia, but just never really got to play or got his opportunity to keep an eye on. Then they've got some studs. They got two linebackers in Owen Papo and then the Monday in the secondary, and then two really good corners in Roger McCray and should be actual players. So they're pretty well balanced on both sides of the ball. This is another I think I might lean towards Penn State in a very close game just because it is a wideout and and I think that's going to make a big difference. But I see either way, I think it's going to be low.
Yeah, I think the second most fun matchup of the weekend is probably Nehemiah Pritchett against Dotson. That's gonna be the most interesting wide receiver cornerback matchup of the weekend. Yeah, of course, their running back Tank Bigsby for Auburn, really aptly named Tank Bigsby. He's a load. I'll say that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think Auburn has the chops or the mental toughness to go into Penn State and win, even though Penn State's a little down this year. Of course, what the whiteout games are really fun, really high energy atmosphere. And James Franklin is another guy that's been touted to be a replacement at USC. So we'll see how that distracts the Penn State. A lot of names, big names connected to the job, of course. But I think Franklin's been the most touted name over the past several years for that job. I don't think he'll leave. He's the East Coast version of David Shaw. He's from the state of Pennsylvania. He loves it there. So, I mean, he's going to be there forever unless he goes to the NFL or he gets fired eventually or he retires. I think Penn State wins this by 10 due to the atmosphere being what it is. And so I don't think Auburn's ready for it. I don't think. This is probably the best competition they played so far this year, which isn't the best idea in the world to to test yourself. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But yeah. There's another game on the schedule at around that time that's really low key interesting. Tulane at Ole Miss, 8 p.m. on ESPN2. That's gonna be really fun.
An interesting one. We saw Tulane week 1 almost right now, and Michael Pratt, who was very impressive in that game, and he's very impressive stats so far this year. And his leading receiver Tyrique James at tight end, and they a sophomore from Kansas State and Lance Robinson. So, a name to watch for that team. And then Nick Anderson at linebacker is their getting player so far. But play Ole Miss team that I've liked a lot this year. Matt Corral, I'm very, very He's shown that he can do it through the air and on the ground so far. He's got a running back, Jerry, a little bit and catch the ball out of the backfield. They got Nick Broker, offensive tackle, and then they've got some guys on defense as well, per usual at Ole Miss. So they're obviously probably close to it, but they could be a team that gets 10 wins this year and get a pretty ball game. So I'm excited to see them in conference play. I think Tulane is good. I don't think they have to knock off Ole Miss right now. But I'm very, very excited to see Ole Miss is
Yeah, of course, Ole Miss is. I think they're going to win this one, but I think they're going to win by at least 14. But don't be surprised if Tulane keeps it close for at least 3 quarters. Of course, Jerry and Ely, he's on my fantasy team, so I hope he balls out. Matt Corral, he probably won't. Is getting a lot of first round love, but I think he ultimately settles in the second and third round range. But Jonathan Mingo, he's another receiver for them. He's a baller this year. And so, of course, as we all saw in the Louisville game in the opener, their Labor Day weekend, it was a targeting fest. So that rule needs to be changed really badly. Targeting is it's a joke. Yeah, but I digress. It's going to be really interesting, this one. It's Tulane, Michael Pratt, as you said. I think he won a lot of fans over for his play in the Oklahoma game. He was knocked down repeatedly over and over and over, but he kept on fighting, getting back up and fighting. So I think Ole Miss wins by 14. So I think that wraps up the evening slate for now. But moving on to the late night, where all the fun is at, Pac-12 After Dark, my hours of the night. Arizona State at BYU, 10:15 ESPN. BYU is fresh off the win at the Holy War, and Arizona State won last week, so that's gonna be interesting for them to see how they match up. BYU should be in the Pac-12 with the amount of times they play this year in the conference. I think Arizona State is a little bit more talented, but BYU is more well coached at this point. And Arizona State, of course, has that scandal going on with its coaching staff, so we'll see how that affects them this year. So, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, like you said, you got BYU coming off that big win last week, so they're on their high horse. Is pretty good so far this year. Filling in the big shoes left by a little guy. Their running back has been impressive this year, along with Neil Powell at so they've got some guys there. Very impressive win, obviously, last weekend. And that's kind of I like Jaden Daniels. He's got a very small frame for a quarterback, but he's a some year in the draft. They got some guys on defense as well. Merlin Robertson, they are running back Rashad White. They'll probably be drafted as well. So they got should be a day 2, day 3 guy. So they've got some talent as well. They got home field advantage. They're on a hot streak right now. So I think they're and would not be surprised if Jaden Daniels can come in and be the best version of Daniels that Arizona will.
Yes, I think BLU has the most scenic college football stadium out there in the country. You know, the mountains in the backdrop of the stadium. It's really gorgeous. For people who haven't been out there to a game yet, you guys should go. It's probably the most gorgeous scenery. And of course, the uniforms are always clean, no matter what. And I'm a huge closet BYU fan since the old days. I'm not that old, but of course, Jaron Hall is probably my most favorite non-Power Five quarterback this year to watch. He's really fun. Uh, for Arizona State, I think Jaden Daniels is their version of Khalil Tate from Arizona a couple of years ago. He's a little bit skinnier, but yeah, yeah, running back, they're a little loaded this year. Like I said, Rashad White, he's draftable. Their receivers are really good. Uh, LV Bunkley Shelton, Johnny Wilson, he's doing pretty good job replacing the talent they lost the past couple of years, like Brandon Ayuk, Frank Darby. So, of course, Chad Johnson Jr., Ocho Cinco's son. I can't believe he, we're watching his son play after watching years of watching the father play for so long in the NFL. So, of course, Donovan West, the guard prospect, I think he's draftable this year. I think. And, Chase Lucas, Shaq Jones, the cornerback tandem, that's the most interesting, I think. So we'll see how that turns out. I think, of course, I can't forget Merlin Robertson, their former 5-star linebacker. He's been there for years, it seems like. So I think Arizona State pulls it out by at least, I think, 7.
Yeah, yeah. I like BYU just because of the home field, but it's gonna be one for.
Yeah, it's Pac-12 after dark, so it's gonna get weird, as it always does. Uh, for some reason, it's just Pac-12 after dark never fails to deliver. That's why it's my most favorite conference to cover, because it gets weird really fast. uh, Moving on to probably the best game of the night, late night slate, that is Fresno State at UCLA, 10:45 on the Pac-12 network. So if you don't have it, please get the Pac-12 network. Uh, I'm not sponsored by the Pac-12, but if you're out there, anybody at the Pac-12 office watching this when it goes up, we're welcome to being sponsored by y'all. Y'all are our favorite conferences out there. Please, please sponsor us. Anyway, Fresno State, they gave Oregon some trouble last week, so Jake Hayner, the former Washington transfer, he was really good in that game. Ronnie Rivers, their running back, he was really good as well. But Fresno State has a couple of guys every year that get drafted, so yeah, we'll see how that turns out. But UCLA, of course, they're on a hot streak. They're the talk of the South, talk of the country, and they might win the South Division by default because the other South teams aren't that good. So Zach Charbonnet, the running back from Michigan transfer, he's been really good for them. DTR's been really good for them as well. Defensively, Quentin Lake, he's the leader, and they all three of them should be drafted really highly. Probably the max ceiling on those guys, probably third round at best for those. Charbonnet, I don't know if he comes back next year, but he's really good. Of course, his backup, Britton Brown, he's really good as well. So we'll see how that turns out. And it's in Los Angeles, so I don't know. Probably based on the game Fresno and Oregon game, I think probably Fresno State hangs around for a half or third quarter. Probably UCLA wins going away, probably 21. But of course, it's late night Pac-12 after dark action. I wouldn't be surprised if Fresno State hangs around for much longer.
Yeah, like you said, this is Interesting game. Out of control and unexpected in the Pac-12. UCLA, their team, like this year, and Charbonnet have both been studs. I've really enjoyed watching that duo this year. Like a little bit of first round talk as well. The offensive tackle position so that's definitely a big name to watch. And then on the other side, you've got that Ronnie Rivers was a running back I like coming into the season just because of his pass catcher. So I think he's kind of a running back to watch, possible. But I think he's a guy that scouts are going to have their eyes on for sure. I think there's going to be too talented. I think they pull away, winning by 20 plus.
Yeah, it's a good game to to fall asleep to, but it's I think there's some upset potential here. I think if Fresno State carries over the way they played Oregon, but I think UCLA is too talented for that. Of course, I think Greg Dulcich is up there for. I think he's going to be a Mackey finalist if things work out. He won't win the award, but he's really talented. He might be drafted maybe 4th round if his process works out so well. So, of course, you mentioned Sean Ryan. I think he's one of the better West Coast tackles in the country. So, he's maybe a day 2 guy. Maybe he won't go any lower than the 5th round. I don't believe, based on his tape so far. So we'll see how that turns out. I think that wraps up all the slate for this week. So do you have any other thoughts?
I don't really. It's right now. I mean, you've got Bama and Georgia sitting as the top dogs. It looks that you see, but you some teams like Clemson has a loss, and Ohio State now has a loss. I mean, you don't want to count the team out. But I mean, right now, you'd be looking at like an Iowa and an Oregon conversation, I believe, towards the end of the year. Especially those heated discussion, a lot of heated debate. And I'm excited to see the chaos unfold.
Yeah, it's the first playoff rankings come like late next month. I think it is. Yeah, I think it's like around Halloween time. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how everything bears out. We have a few more weeks until then, so a lot more conference games to watch out for. A couple of more big non-conference games to watch out for. So I think Oregon is a surprise contender. I think if they keep it up and don't lose throughout the season anymore, I think they're the favorites to win the conference. Given I think they also play UCLA this year in the regular season, so I think that could be a possible rematch down the road. We'll see in the conference title game. So we'll see about that. And I think Alabama and Clemson are locks for the playoff this year so far. Georgia's probably a third lock if they win out and beat Florida and Jacksonville. So we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. The NFL kicked off this week. So finally, both NFL and college action on the same weekends. Finally, even though unfortunately my Titans got lost and got blown out in the process. But it's only one game. It's one game does not a season make, as I say. we're looking forward to next week against Seattle. I think in Seattle, so I'm not feeling too confident. um, but it's the NFL is really wide open this year. I feel like it's going to be really fun. The NFC North, the NFC East is kind of fun. It's the yeah, yeah, it's gonna be really fun. I think AFC North is gonna be fun as well. Um, hopefully, everyone stays healthy and stays away from COVID and all that good stuff. And hopefully, we make it through a full season without any interruptions or anything at all. And the Saints going to Green Bay, that was fun and blowing them out. And Jameis Winston throwing for less than 200 yards and 5 touchdowns. So he's on track to throw like 90 touchdowns and less than 2,500 yards. That would be an awesome stat line to have. Any other thoughts on this week 1 action that we saw this past weekend?
Yeah, like you said, it was just nice to have a full football. And I mean, a happy guy. Steelers pulled it out. They made some adjustments after a sloppy hopefully our offense can improve a little bit to keep up with that defense. It is wide open in the NFL. I mean, only week 1, obviously, so technically anybody could be. I was like filling out my power rankings for the weekend, and after how do I rank the rest of this? It's like I didn't know. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for NFL fans and football fans in general that we have so much competition here. Through this time of COVID and just in life in general, just stay levels this year and no interruptions, no forfeits or controversy like last year. No.
Just a quick reminder, the Houston Texans are the AFC South champions in week 1. Believe it or not, they're 1-0, while the rest of the division they have 1 loss. So make of that what you will. Even though it's the Jaguars who have their own issues regarding their coach, Urban Meyer, who's the heavy favorite to go to USC. But that's another podcast for another day. I don't know if Urban Meyer wants to go back to college. I don't think. I think he has a big enough ego to make it work in make it work in the pro ranks, or try to make it work in the pro ranks. But we'll see how that turns out. Okay, I think that wraps up for the show today. Ryan, what are your socials and where can we follow you and all that good stuff?
And I'm Blitz. I'm the director of scouting. Definitely look out for our scouting reports and our very excited to get that out to the public as soon as possible. It's still sitting around the Pittsburgh Steelers fan website and social media. You can follow me at social media platform. Just look out for all of our stuff from Blitz this year. We got a lot of content coming out, a lot of good scouts, a lot of good writers, and exciting.
And of course, guys, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2un20blitz. Yeah, I have some personal news coming out soon, so be on the lookout for that on Twitter and Instagram as well, if you are so inclined to follow me there. And of course, on Facebook, my name is Joseph Young. If you want to follow me there, become my friend and all that stuff. But I think that wraps up for the show today. So stay safe, everybody. We look forward to talking with you all next week.